Yeah, I'm disappointed as well with this. The affordable housing provision was not a perfect instrument. I'm the first one to concede that, but there really is no great evidence that the alternative, being the market, is going to deliver. We've had the Property Council come here and present and said, really, we want you to just really change the zoning in Remuera and all the leafy suburbs, because that's where we want to build houses. We don't want to build cheap housing. They only really want to, they made it very clear, and that was on behalf of their bill, that they only want to build high-end housing. So I just wonder, as this city is becoming incredibly expensive for people to live in, is where are we going to get the book stackers in the libraries? Where are we going to get cleaners from who we're paying $16 or $17 an hour to? Because where are they going to live? How can you afford to live in Auckland? There is a significant problem with teachers, nurses, that sort of level of professional people who don't get paid big money. Primary school teacher starts on $48,000, and some people that's a lot of money, but for someone who's done a lot of training, that is not a lot of money. And they just can't afford to live in Auckland, and increasingly we're getting teachers a real significant difficulty in recruiting teachers in many of the schools, and certainly in the schools in the poorer areas. So I just noticed in the staff comments under B that the staff have accepted that this has a potential to make a far greater difference to the supply of housing. Can that be explained as to how this will make a significant difference to the supply of affordable housing? And also, where would that affordable housing be? So is it going to be way out west, out towards Kumeu, and the person works in Otahu earning whatever, let's say $40,000 a year, and then has to spend a fair amount of their salary and time getting to work from Kumeu or South Auckland, you know, I don't know, Waiuku up to the job. I mean, is that where people are going to be? But I'm just intrigued to the statement there. It has a potential to make a far greater difference, given that that wasn't the staff position before.
So in terms
of our position, I should qualify that.
So in terms of the comment on in B, in the overview report and the report that the panel did around this issue, they indicated that they believed that other tools and standards that they had recommended in their version of the unitary plan in their mind would achieve more affordable housing than retaining this particular provision in the plan. And the areas they identified in that was the provision, the removal of density standards throughout the residential zones, the provision for minor dwelling units in the single house, large lot, and also in some of the rural zones, the spatial application of the mixed housing suburban, mixed housing urban and terraced housing zone, and there was one more that I can't off the top of my head remember, but their view was that by providing that much more capacity, by removing some of the restrictions, it was about the removal of such things as required parking, etc., that would encourage more affordable housing across the region. So that's what that comment in B is, that on reading those different reasons from the panel, on balance, the officers have accepted the recommendation to delete the retained affordable housing provisions.
So, effectively, if it was in the inner city or indeed the inner ring, you know, as far as Point Chev or New Lynn, it would be very small box apartments, effectively, very small apartments, and then otherwise you'd be going way further out to where the land is reasonably cheap, relatively cheap, I should say. So is that really where it would end up?
Yep. I don't think we can comment because the issue that the unitary plan is providing for different forms and choices of housing that this that Auckland hasn't experienced yet. And so it's very hard to be able to say exactly where that choice will occur. In the view of the panel and their recommendations, they believe they've increased the choice of the type of housing across Auckland. Where the market picks that up, we at this moment can't tell you. I can't give you a view on that.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, now I've got Penny H, Councillor Penny H.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A while back I would have been arguing equally passionately with Councillor Clowen, or alongside Councillor Clowen and Councillor Casey. You know, some of us have spent the last 6 years trying to work on the housing affordability issue, and it is at the moment a complex and a hugely multi-layered issue. The reality is, as Mrs Perrott has quite wisely said, genuine housing affordability is going to be achieved through the range of housing typologies that the removal of the density rule will deliver up. And I'm hoping that the zonings that are going to change across Auckland will aid that, as well as I'm also hoping the removal of the minimum parking regulations, so you have parking spaces actually built into living spaces rather than car houses. The reality of this is that it's not a genuine solution to finding decent places for people to live. We're starting to try and solve a social problem with a planning rule, and the more I investigate it and the more I spend time reading about this, the reality is that those three solutions that Mrs Perrott explained are really the way forward on this one. There's another whole issue which is not planning law, neither is it the unitary plan, nor is it the RMA, but it's actually the political will of the powers that be to genuinely engage in this issue. And that's a separate issue, and we can't take up the slack with our planning rules. So I firmly believe if we are dedicated to genuine affordability, we'll get absolutely behind the work that is still in front of us in the next few pages and alter those planning rules and be brave around upzoning, be brave around the no density rule, and be brave around the removal of minimum parking requirements. So I'm so conflicted. You know, I'm actually going to vote for the staff recommendation, and then I'll just accept the condemnation that comes with it, that I don't support affordable housing in Auckland, and nothing could be further from the truth. But I think we need to look at a genuine long-term solution to this, and I think we're getting there this way.
Councillor Camp.
Oh, thank you, Mr Chair. Look, I'm very pleased to second this behind Councillor Quacks, because I always viewed this as very well-meaning, but at the end of the day, its impact would be at best token, and in reality it hasn't stood the test of scrutiny. And like the previous speakers, when the question is posed, where is our affordable housing, I suppose we have to point to the unitary plan and say this is what this is. A big part of this is all about, is releasing that land supply. Because I sold a house in Meadowbank last year, and 75% of its cost was put into the land, and there was barely any land. Our windows opened out onto every boundary fence just about, and 75% of that house, Councillor Casey, was caught up in the 300 square metres of land. If we can, as the Deputy Mayor has suggested, and Mrs Perrott, the whole thing about this unitary plan is it softens our rural-urban boundary. It opens up the throats to more land supply. It strengthens up mixed housing suburban, mixed housing urban, THAB, our metropolitan centre height and density, rightly or wrongly. It adds minor dwellings in more of our rural areas and single house lots. It puts countryside living as a great transitional threshold between rural and urban. and it opens up something that Councillor Quacks and others have been calling for 20 years, and that is land. It's not the buildings that necessarily are where the majority of the cost is. For most of us, it has been the land. And so where is the affordable housing? Well, I hope, like all of us here today, that while 9 people, 1 person might have benefited with this provision of retained affordable housing, 9 others would have paid more.
That's right.
With these policies, putting out a myriad and comprehensive solution over time, and not this year or next, but over time, over the next generation, those 10 people, all of them, will benefit somehow, because the cost of housing comparative to household income and that will come back to a more affordable measure, and it can only help but. So I have huge confidence in where this unitary plan is heading, and I think the fact that we are dealing with this in such a collegial and collective way, I support what the officers are doing here, that the retained affordable housing provision is arguably not needed, particularly when you factor in that the independent hearings panel have come back with an oversupply of housing. And so I suppose my caution is this is tokenism that might have delivered the odd person, the odd house at everyone else's expense. But what we're achieving in a bigger sense here is a longer term vision of a more competitively priced land supply market, which will reduce housing comparatively to incomes and to wealth over time for all Aucklanders. It will take decades, but this will be achieved, and it won't be such an issue as it has become after 20 years of land supply constriction.
Strangulation.
Exactly.
John.
Okay, thanks,
Hang on.
thanks, Mr.
John,
Mayor.
I just got a question.
Oh,
Is it okay?
John, I thought John,
Yeah,
the
I know.
councillor.
This is John.
Off.
John Dogood. I'm just going to ask him a question. Is that all right? Good.
Sure,
Then
fire
you-
ahead. It's okay with me.
Sure. So, John, we've had this policy in place for a bit, and you know, much of the discussion around the table has been reflected around the view that it's not been successful. Just remind us, when did we actually put this policy in place?
The rule was included in the unitary plan, but because it was in the district plan section of the unitary plan, it had no immediate legal effect. So other than in the SHA areas, and that's under its own special legislation, as you know, this policy and this rule has not as yet come into effect.
So in the SHA areas then, because we specifically put that into the housing accord, probably against a sentiment that we shouldn't, but we did. Have we got any idea of how well it's doing in terms of a policy for 10 to 15% of the homes, you know, at that sort of 30% you know, rate?
Because neither John and I are directly involved in the SHAs, we'd have to go back, we'd have to go and find that information for you. It is something that is negotiated when SHA comes in for a qualifying development, and they have done some work recently on the number of affordable housing units that have been consented in that process. So I'm sure if we get some staff to do some ringing around, we'll be able to find out the answer to that pretty quickly. So I'll get that underway.
I'll probably go down fighting like a shark on this. But I actually feel strongly about this. And I needed to ask that question because it's not really had the chance. It hasn't had the chance. We actually put it in place, and I had to fight the government to actually get that affordability clause into the housing accord. And there's been a lot of discussion over the last day or two about what will deliver more affordable houses in Auckland. And there are a whole lot of reasons as to what might deliver more affordable houses in New Zealand. It's just not land supply.
I know, so keep it in
It's
there.
just not more developmental opportunity. It's just not a broader or wider economic and competitive marketplace where you have more than one supplier to choose from.